Bingbing, thank you very much for coming on the Business World and Mindset podcast today. For those listening, Bingbing is a very busy mompreneur and experienced business person, and she heads up a Chantilly Group as well, which among other companies has got Chantilly assets. So the idea of today is just a sort of light-hearted talk and chat about all things business and what's happening in the world, in the economy. She's going to share her story, her experiences, so that we can get to inspire the new generation of people who are looking to get into business or looking to build wealth or do something of their own. So, Bingbing, I thought we would just start by if you imagine yourself like in 50 years or 100 years' time, when people are opening to get to listen to this podcast and they want to know who is Bingbing or who was Bingbing. So like you're sort of a biography in a chronological order, like your background, growing up, education, so that people can just begin to understand and get to observe that part of you. So we'll start off with that. So just take us through your background, please. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. That's a great way of asking that question. Instead of just tell us a bit about yourself, it's been 50, 100 years.
Yes,
It gives the perspective, isn't it? In 50, 100 years, I'm just a piece of carbon somewhere. Well, I am still just a piece of carbon, really, on this planet. About me, clearly, I've worked in the energy industry. Talking about carbon. So I am Chinese, obviously, as you could see. Well, I guess people will be on the podcast. You can judge from my name, perhaps. I was born in China. So long story short, I was born in China, but back in the days when it was still very communist, so to speak. There wasn't such opening of the market, etc., etc. And it was... we were very, very poor, even though I had all the love in the world. So I didn't feel poor, but I definitely remember the financial struggles of my mom and dad. I don't know how many of us know about those communist systems. You didn't have money. You only had these little coupons that you have to go and exchange for tiny portion of things. And I still remember you really have to be extremely friendly and nice to the people that give out meat. Which my mom has always been, to get rid of the fattiest parts. You can get the most grease out of them. They get dropped into tiny little things, because otherwise things are just tasteless. You eat this boiled like vegetables. But anyway, as a child, I didn't really mind those. As I mentioned, as part of the Chinese system, I am still the only child. So I had all the love in the world, really. So I was a happy child, just very used to saving every penny, watching every single little piece of morsel of food, no waste, that kind of life growing up. Long story short, then I studied in China, then I left China and went to do my secondary education in Singapore with the support of lots of scholarships and sponsorships, etc., for my academic results at the time. That's how we could afford it, really. And that's when China first started opening up, all these opportunities first started showing themselves. Then after Singapore, I came to the UK. I studied in the UK again with scholarships, sponsorships, like worked every minute I could find in my life to pay for everything. And then started working at a big energy company as one of this graduate training schemes that was meant to fast track you to the top of the company very quickly. It was one of the biggest companies in the world. And as part of that working journey, worked in the UK, moved to the Netherlands, lived in the Netherlands for quite a few years, led projects 20 billion US dollars, managed international teams of hundreds and hundreds of people around the world in Houston, Manila, Chennai, Singapore, etc. And then, so really had a taste of the so-called glamour of the big corporate executive, but then you also had a real inside look at how actually not so glamorous that lifestyle is. We'll probably touch a bit more on that later on. And then in parallel, obviously, did what everybody kind of generally does. Had got married, had children, now have two young kids, and realized actually the most scarce commodity in my life is no longer money or the so-called career, is really my time. That's when I started building a business on the side. And started in property business and expanding in different business areas, obviously applying my commercial finance background, but really having I actually had to have quite a few personal breakthroughs to really go through the wall between being an employee, even though a highly paid employee, nonetheless still the employee lifestyle mindset, into feeling more like an entrepreneur. Maybe worth touching on that, given that people might be listening to this in 50 to 100 years, is you talk to a lot of people and they've always told you, oh, I always knew I was an entrepreneur. They started selling dummies in nurseries. They gave you these stories that made you think, oh yes, they knew it from the moment they could talk. Whereas I'm definitely not one of those. I'm the furthest away from one of those. I was the communist way of education. The entire education system I've gone through was about teaching you to conform, to be the same, do not raise your voice. It's all about what other people want for you. It has a lot to do with external validation. And I definitely was a perfect product of that system. I studied hard. If anything, there was not a single bit of me that speaks entrepreneur ever, until when the need arose for me, when life was just not sustainable anymore. We had a child that needed additional support. We had me on the brink of breakdown. Even though from the outside everything looked perfect, we had big paychecks, me and my husband, great lifestyle, so to speak. But from the inside, we just weren't happy. And that's when I had almost no choice but to look at alternatives. Then I discovered that actually you didn't have to rely on this paycheck. So I'm quite sure we'll touch on that later on. And then stepped into the the very, very scary entrepreneurial world, where there's no paycheck, where you have to go and sell your own product, your own services, make your own investment rather than invest other people's money. It's very, very big transformation for me personally. But as part of that process, I found a deep passion and love for being an entrepreneur. So I was very much an educated or late life entrepreneur rather than, the moment I was born, I knew it type. So that brought us to today, really. That's how you and I met, Alex, very fortunately, through quite a few various occasions, all very entrepreneurial. And today I still have my job, but I'm looking to take a step back from that. Business has grown to a scale where it's ready for me, and I'm also ready for it. I think to take a more decisive choice, let's say, what is it I want to do going forward? So that's where I am today.
Wow. That's a very colorful introduction there. But it sort of brings me to another point, actually, where you mentioned about, growing up in the communist regime and being molded into a specific kind of person. I guess the other question is, do some of these things actually stay with people in them? It's just that they haven't discovered them as yet. And also, there must be a role of like situations and circumstances and your environment that actually can bring those out. Because you mentioned there that you got married, you had kids, and then you discovered that you had to do something different. Presumably, if none of those situations, the things that come into play, you would have probably just got on, trundled on with life without actually getting to discover yourself in this particular life. So that's quite an interesting observation to note that the life situations and experiences that happen can actually get us to start thinking or discover other things. But that being said as well, I think it's also the person, because some people can actually get into those situations but not take that action or not get tuned in into maybe I should look into something else or discover something else and just gotten along. So I reckon it's probably a balance of those two. But I can see there must have been some like burning thing buried deep down you, but it can never be suppressed until at some point it'll come out, and you found the situation to bring it out in a way, isn't it?
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think, if you listen to the great philosophers, etc., they try to, which I am very interested in those things, because having speaking in some of these podcasts and being asked these questions a lot is how did you make that jump, that transformation? Because, we as part of the progressive community or people we commonly know, Alex, quite a few of them, a lot of them were like, oh, they were broke, they were heavily in debt, they had nothing, like life was really, they had nothing to lose. Hence, they started their own business and they did very well. Almost, you hear majority of the stories was like that. It was kicked out of school, my mom gave up on me and all those things. Whereas I definitely was not one of those. My career was going extremely well. I was promoted super fast. I was told I'm one of the high potential ones going to the top, la 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 la. And for me to give that up is really quite a challenge, not just for the career, it's more internally my self identity, my perception of what success means, my meaning of life, etc., etc. I had something real to lose to give it up. And I think that really almost strengthened or challenged my will and desire and passion for being an entrepreneur, for come out more in control of my own life. And exactly as you said, was mentioned the great philosopher, people often say every single action a human being takes is either to seek pleasure or to avoid pain. So either the pleasure is big enough for you to seek, or the pain is big enough for you to try to do something with it. So I think for me, it was clear the trigger at the beginning was to avoid the pain. However, that pain obviously has to be strong enough to push you into something. And if I see a lot of my friends or people around me in my similar situation, especially here in London, you see a lot of these big flying executives that are either dying in a hotel or ended up, having stress problems or these things. You hear all those stories. I see those stories around me. And I think they talk about this fight or flight response, right? When your body is in stress, which one do you choose? I think a lot of people decide to use some passive fight. If I see people, they started remodeling their kitchen, buying a bigger house, buying a summer holiday home. You find other ways to almost distract yourself from the pain, but you don't get rid of it, because after that initial immediate gratification, the pain remains. Whereas I think I'm probably, as you said, Alex, something that can't be suppressed. I'm probably the type that naturally go more towards the fighting mode, me as a person. So instead of flight or freeze, pretend it's not there, there's something in me that decided to fight it. And hence, and it didn't happen overnight, right? It took quite a few years, as you know, to get there. But obviously the end result is now I break through or break away from it, whichever way you look at it. And then discovered a whole new world, almost as an accident that I wasn't expecting. I definitely didn't know I would be here today when I first started, but I just needed to know. I needed somehow break free from that pain, that scenario, the circumstance at the time.
And also it seems to me that there was an element of curiosity almost, to sort of stop and think that life must be there must be a lot more to life than just this basic. You go to work, you cover your bills, and you do this. There must be a bigger question, a bigger answer, and that seeking of that answer or that curiosity is probably that gets people to actually discover the other side of them, rather than waiting for a life shock or something to come in, like you lose a job or something happens.
Exactly. Yes.
So, and I imagine that's the difficult thing for most people to make that shift when everything is okay. They have a high-powered job, even when they have kids and they need support. They've got a lot of money. They can hire people and do that, and life goes on. So you must take that extra thing that is in there. So that's very interesting. So, from your experience, how do you see the two, like the office job or versus the entrepreneurial? What are the good bits and the highs and the lows of both, the way you see it, or one side or the other?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I often ask myself. There are certainly days when you ask you, for anyone listening who's thinking of, leaving an employment, becoming an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing I think we both can tell them for sure is there definitely will be days you think, why did I do this? Why didn't I stay in that job? I was comfortable, I had my
Yeah.
salary. Um, but I would say they are very, very different.
Mm.
Um, so as an employee, the only my own experience, obviously, that's what I'm doing right now is I find life as an entrepreneur much, much more fulfilling, and it speaks much more directly to who I am. It's my connection into it. And I'm not saying you can't have that as an employee. If you find a direct connection with your job, we know a lot of like NHS or social workers or even people working in big profitable companies, if they see a real value in what they do day to day, in their contribution to your team, to your manager, to your company's wider purpose, that could actually be totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, because I was in a big company, I led big deals all over the world, in Italy, in Qatar, in the US, um, so they were massive things. But being part of a company, my feeling as an employee is you are kind of a small screw in the big machine, so you
Yeah.
constantly turn, 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 turn. Yes, the company does move forward, and I was fortunate I worked in a great company, but there's just not so much of a direct link. So I was given the marching order by my management, who got the order from their management. That's the hierarchy of our organization. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just the way it's designed for the
Yeah.
entire system to work. So
Mm.
almost wherever you are in that hierarchy, there's always someone giving orders for you to march forward. You make it your own if you are self-motivated, etc., etc. You personalize that marching order, and then you take it, you make a success out of it. But ultimately, you fit into the overall system.
Mm.
And because, again, I was very fortunate, and I don't want to use just the word fortunate for anyone who's listening, especially the young people. You
Yeah.
create your own luck. So I was given the opportunity to be at very senior positions way before kind of what my age would kind of have taken me to, because of the development, etc., etc. I've seen people that are 20, 25 years ahead of me in
Yeah.
the organization. Nonetheless, they are still a screw in a big machine. They just the screw sits higher than me. But
Yeah.
the fact that you have someone over you, someone under you, that doesn't change. And it's
Mm.
not like one day you get up somewhere, you're in total control. It doesn't work that way. Whereas for
Mm.
me, the coming into the entrepreneurial world, I realized whatever business I engage in, whatever activity I choose, it's a direct connection with me, and it can be a direct amplification of the purpose I see, the role I want to play in the world, how I want to shape the business, almost regardless of what that business is.
Yeah.
So, for example, we are now in the property business, right? You've heard this before, Alex. We looked at different property investment models, and we looked at our personal circumstances, etc., etc. We picked the multi-led business model, which is very high yield, cash flowing fast, lower risk, short investment cycle, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So then, how do we add value to our customers via this business, via also fulfilling our own financial needs? Then we realize that what customer needs, that's not being met at the time and still at this moment, was high-end room rentals.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Yeah.
tons and tons of rooms in the market, but they're of very poor quality from legacy reasons, because
Yeah.
quite a few years ago, you just put room on the market, it'll get snatched up because the demand was so high. And a lot of
Yeah.
landlords or property investors have stayed in that mode and didn't adapt with the market, but demands have moved on. So we see a gap in the market, and that's very aligned with our personal mission of high grading people's living environment. So so we started doing that, and business is doing well, etc., etc. So there, you see, the moment I want to make a change in our product, I can directly make that change, and I think that um, feedback loop is extremely fulfilling, and normally it's hard to get when you are employee. And now I'm more engaged in the coaching, in the training, in the sharing of my experience side. And that is just simply the most inspirational, most fulfilling experience anybody can have. I really do feel that way. Is whatever you do, you see a direct link between that and the value you're creating in the world. And for me, I think that's probably, there are many other differences, obviously, financial upside, the risk downside, etc., between being employee and entrepreneur. However, that direct connection, that fulfillment, that loop is the biggest differentiator between the two.
Between the two. Wow. And you mentioned there something quite key about linking whatever you're doing to yourself, like your values and what makes it tick. It just reminds me, you probably listened to John D. Martin many times, where he talks about your highest values and all of that. So it is possible and true that some people in themselves, they can be satisfied, and it's something that resonates themselves well to being an employee. Maybe they like that kind of structure in an organized way in the work, and they've got their holidays and everything. It's fine. And according to the values, they can be that as well. But because if you look at the world, if everyone was an entrepreneur, then there'll be no one to actually work for the people to do certain things. So in a way, the world looks like it's got some order to it. Some people will be brought up as entrepreneurs, other people will stay with their values as employees, and other people will do trades, like tradespeople, they do all sorts of things. So that it keeps the whole world working in order in the
ecosystem. Yeah. That's an interesting point, Alex. I never thought about it that way. That's you have this holistic view of the world that's very intriguing, actually. Think of 50, 100 years and the grand scheme. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Actually, that made me think. I think it's perhaps everybody has a journey.
Yeah.
Right. Probably at the beginning of everybody's career or working life, most likely, I would say, not necessarily. Again. In most cases, there will probably be a period of being employed, of learning, because I do feel the company structure or the organizational structure in a big or small corporate is very efficient in passing down knowledge and wisdom. Things that have been accumulated over years and years. For the company I was working for has been around for over 100 years. And the amount of training that I actually took for granted, really, I have gone through over my 15 years. Now, when I look back, now when I come out of it, look at what's around elsewhere, it's mind-boggling the amount of learning and experience I was given. That was because the company has so much resource, so much history. You can do a huge number of deals within a very small period of time. Whereas if you are on your own as entrepreneur right from day one, you probably do a few ever, most likely. Unless you're, I don't know, people that's high energy, those workaholics. Otherwise, it's just not humanly feasible. However, I was given the system, the process, and a massive team almost instantly to do these things. That as an employee, you get that. But I think for everyone, as a personal journey, and or for people who would like to have a taste of that, then the transformation into entrepreneur or moving into owning your own business of some shape or form, or even a charity, a school board, like any kind of organization where you bring yourself into, rather than working inside as an employee, I would say. I think the experience itself probably could be for everyone, but obviously would come in different shape or form at some point in their life, or maybe even after retirement or something. But it's an interesting point, how the whole ecosystem, they hang together. Everyone has their role.
It has to fit, isn't it? Because within there, even for the knowledge that those entrepreneurs. There's academics there who actually do research. Maybe they do academic work in PhDs. They study history. They dig up sites and all of that. As entrepreneurs, when you're expanding your knowledge, you're also learning from that. You understand things. So every single person has got a role and a place to play in this ecosystem. But you put it very rightly to say that everyone has to find that role for themselves. So you have to know themselves. But and also I mean, for me, rightly so, it has to be a journey, because that's people you can also evolve along that path. I always think of it like everyone maybe when they grow up, they're youngsters, maybe they should do something, maybe even like work in McDonald's or something, so you get to learn and understand certain things. But then you can move on and progress in your understanding levels and do something else, and then someone else comes over and take that, and then you move up the ladder. You become maybe an employee or an entrepreneur or whatever. But there's some sort of involvement as you get to discover yourself, as you get to be more curious to understand the life's questions as to what is my purpose or my mission in life. So interesting. You mentioned that as well. So any lessons, like what would you have personally learned as lessons that through your journey of either the highs and the lows, or things that you can share with people as you have progressed over time, as your journey has moved?
Lessons learned. There are so many. You inevitably make all these mistakes. You think. I think if there's one lesson or experience, I would say, of things that I feel that are very, very key to success, will be investment in yourself and self-development. I think even when we first started, which I see a lot of people do around us as well, is people think, I don't have an investment, I don't have properties, I don't have a business. The moment I go and put my money, buy a property, buy a business, or invest in something, I have now suddenly, become an investor, an entrepreneur, a business owner. And in reality, it just doesn't work that way. I think essentially success, or the success you and your business can achieve, is a direct reflection of your psychology and your ability. And you see so many people, they wanted freedom, they wanted time with their children, they wanted to fulfill a bigger purpose in life. They went and did all sorts of things. Again, it's better than not doing anything. But in the end, they had even less time with their children. They definitely didn't have time for themselves. And they if anything, they burn out, or they become a very negative person instead of really fulfilling this purpose they set out for themselves. And I think a lot of that has to do with the transformation, the growth has to happen in the head first. The head needs to become bigger if you picture it. Maybe not physically bigger, but the knowledge, the insight, the mindset. I loved the name of your podcast, Alex. The mindset, your social circle, who you talk to, what you talk about, what you read in newspaper, what comes into your consciousness, what happens in the world around you is different for someone who's a successful entrepreneur or a successful investor than someone who's probably not so successful or haven't grasped the capability yet. And it's so important to come inside, to develop yourself, to build that social circle, to be part of a community that understands what you're trying to do. Almost like if you want to transform, is to break away, not to dump all your friends, but to very consciously create a support network, feed your mind, feed your knowledge pool, grow your capability. You don't have to pay thousands on courses and retreats all around the world. It's really about you can read books, you can just listen to. Nowadays there are podcasts like this. They are even for free. It would be unthinkable a few years ago. And there are all these YouTubes, everything. But really feed the mind, grow the mind, before dashing out and think an accumulation of houses or an accumulation of assets of some sort. will now turn you into an investor. It doesn't work that way. I think it happens inside first, and then it would manifest itself, it would externalize into the right investment, the right business, the right actions, and the right reward,
Yeah.
and the right experience for you. So that's probably and I'm not saying we did, we made mistakes. We started charging ahead and realized there were a few things we did that just wasn't right for us, and we were very in a way lucky, but at the same time I think we joined a few communities, and one of them is progressive, is how you and I met, and it's connections like with people like you that help us learn, that help us grow. And we avoided a lot of those early mistakes, or we minimized the impact a lot of those early mistakes by being part of this community, growing together with mentors, etc. Not saying that's something everybody has to do, but I think it's so important to make sure that the mind grows ahead of getting into something very concrete that then will become a situation that's hard to come back from.
Yeah. Now that's very, very, very deep to understand. It's really, because they say actually, in terms of learning, you can obviously learn from your own mistakes, but you can learn from other people's mistakes as well. So the way you leverage yourself is exactly like you're saying. If you fill yourself with the right social network, the right people, listen to the right things, then you can actually leverage yourself so that certain mistakes that people have made, you can avoid them, because now you're in the right frame of mind and you're understanding things a bit better for yourself. But sometimes maybe as people, we're looking for that immediate gratification.
Exactly.
Get rich quick schemes or something, because you can't wait. In this modern age, if you look at 20, 30 years ago, things are very different here. Everything is fast. There's social media, there's everything. If you want to put out a message there, you can record a video, and all of a sudden 10 million people listen to you, whatever. And it's all very quick and fast. You wouldn't have had that 20, 30 years ago. So you also have to think about how you can adapt, and it's almost it's become a lot of things to think in and do in one person. So is there something that you think you've discovered about yourself through this journey that you didn't know before? It's almost like what do you know now that you would have advised your younger self, for example?
My younger self. Oh, very, very deep, very good question. If there's anything, there are loads. Actually, it's quite interesting. Actually, if I make it a bit more dramatic, it's the whole experience has led me to start seeing a therapist. Not that I'm going crazy or something, but that because I've uncovered such deep things which I think the old mode of life just didn't touch on. That's led me. Therapist / coach is not as traumatic as it might sound. For me to continue to grow that journey. So if there's one thing I would want to, I think that's definitely worth sharing for people listening to this, is a deep sense of insecurity in me that I never knew that was there. Because it's maybe lots of people can relate to this. It's very easy to feel okay about yourself, to feel you are enough when you are following the crowd. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong about it, but if you stay within the mainstream, you do all these things that's supposedly good for you, that what success means, then it's easier to justify that I am doing well, I am successful, even though it might not really feel like that inside. But you don't have to admit it, then it's fine. For example, I've always studied really hard. I've got all these top results, and then I've got a great job. I got promoted, then I have this great husband, this great children, and those make me feel okay from an external perspective. However, when I started, obviously, my own business, deciding what to invest in, is so much more risky. You are so much more exposed to your own decision. You're breaking away from the mainstream. suddenly I discovered there's part of me that was actually extremely scared of being criticized, of being judged. And it almost a sense of such lack of confidence and assure, like self assurance, if you call it that way, like in me, that at moments when I take certain decisions that people around me probably wouldn't really understand because they are still kind of in my old world, it screams at me repeating what they would say or repeating what my mom would have said. Are you crazy? You have a great job. You what are you doing buying houses? Like, this, and it can evoke such strong emotions of me to doubt myself,
Yeah.
to criticize myself, to tell, like, this voice in me that that probably has always been there, just I was never aware of it. If anything, that's something I discovered, and I realized that's what I am consciously working on, is to learn to um, to learn to live with my own decisions, not because the
Yeah.
society has decided they are the right things to do. When I take on a big job, a big promotion, everybody around you will say, oh, great, congratulations, this is wonderful. And that help you to think, that is the right thing to do. I'm glad I did that. Even though inside of you probably didn't find I was thinking, oh my gosh, this big promotion is going to take me away from home even more. Yes, I'm going to get paid more. And so what? All these voices that manage to get suppressed because, yes, everybody else said that that's great, so it must be great. Whereas now I'm in a complete different place, is to really much more acknowledge the voice inside of me that said, actually, I don't want that big job title, those jetting around the world. I want something different. And it's okay to want something different. It's all right to live with a level of judgment from people who couldn't get me. That's fine, because it
Yeah.
speaks much more truth to my own kind of to the life I want. And yeah, and to deal with that sense, the fear inside of me of being judged, of being not enough. Yeah, don't know whether that makes sense or not. Hopefully some of the listeners can relate to that, but that's really something I am even surprised in me that I
Yeah.
discovered.